Hey viewers, this is 1993 F-150, issues with the starter not disengaging. So I started my truck up and it was making some weird noises. Came out here, couldn't quite see what was going on, so I turned it off and the starter still was engaged while I had it off. The only way I could get it to stop was by removing the negative cable. And that stopped it. Some other potential things that you could do. This is your solenoid here. It basically helps stop the discharge going towards the starter and engaging it. So some people tap on this with something metal and it can sometimes stop it. For me, I'm pretty sure my issue is going to be the solenoid. What we did was we tapped on it with something metal. Sometimes the circuits or the connections here will fuse together and tapping on it breaks those connections. So that's what I did. Whenever I would try to put my negative cable back on, it would start trying to engage until, of course, we tapped on it. So it looks like the issue is going to be here. Some people on the forums say that you can remove that and then put your negative cable back on, and sometimes that will help cue you in on what's going on. For me, removing this and putting the negative cable back on still had the starter trying to engage even when the truck was in the off position. Only when we started tapping on this did it actually fix the problem for the short term. So we're going to work on replacing the solenoid here. For me, removing my battery terminals, the negative was just a standard 1/2, which I've got somewhere over here. And then the positive cable, I had to use a deep socket on it, and it was a 13mm. You might have slightly different connections on your battery terminals. To start with, removing the solenoid, take both of the terminal cables off so there's no electricity going to it. You can take this cable off, it should just slide off, set it to the side, and then we're going to work on removing both of these, which for me is going to be a 14mm socket to remove those. I'm taking these screws off. Probably helpful to take a picture just to make sure that you're reapplying everything correctly. For me, I had 2 screws on this side, and I had 1 screw on this side. Once those screws are off, this assembly should just slide out. Keep in mind that you've got a couple different assemblies right here that you need to put on before that. So take a picture so you don't get confused on how it's supposed to go back together. Check for any corrosion on these connections. If you have any, you can get a wire brush, or this is a battery terminal cleaner. This end should work. You can also get wire brush. Work on just making sure that the connection is clean and good. The solenoid itself is attached with 2 screws, one here and one at the top right there. For me, it's going to be, my last video might have cut out, but this is the new solenoid installed. They're the screws. Again, to get those on and off, I used a small 8mm socket with an extension just to get it away from this fender well. New one's on, installed the connectors just the same. My original one had 2 with these bolts here. Honestly, I'm not sure if that's needed or not, but I went ahead and put the second one on. I'm assuming they did that because they might have not had a deep socket wrench to get this first one tight enough, but I'm not sure. One thing to note as well, a lot of the forums that I've read show that the cheaper solenoid that you can get, which is considerably cheaper, a lot of those are, people are reporting that it's breaking, especially when they're tightening these screws down, breaking on this plastic housing. And a lot of other people are experiencing issues where it will work for a couple weeks to a couple months and then they start having the same issue again. People that have bought the Motorcraft Ford solenoid have related that it seems to be a much better product that doesn't break on them. So just food for thought. I went ahead and bought the more expensive one just based on what I've read. Once you have the solenoid on, your next job is to reattach your positive and negative terminals. Just a little extra note, when you're reattaching these terminals, you want to basically tighten them just enough to where they're not pulling off, essentially. A lot of people end up just over tightening them and cranking them down. So just enough to where they don't pull off and you're good. So for me, I just started it back up. Started up just fine. No weird noises, no starter continuously trying to engage. So we should be good. Now, if replacing the solenoid doesn't work for you, there's a bunch of different things that it could be. A lot of times it's a wire not getting a positive ground somewhere. Sometimes it's with the solenoid, sometimes it's down where the starter's at. That's something that it could be. The other thing is it could be your starter component that is under the dash could be bad, which is right up under there. So those are two other potential things that could be going wrong with your truck if replacing the solenoid doesn't help. But for me, based on the sudden onset of the truck all of a sudden just having this issue and the starter just staying fully engaged, that's what led me to think it was the solenoid, since it was a working one day event and not the other. I haven't seen any animal droppings or anything else that would indicate, something chewing on my wires, which there's always that possibility regardless. But for me, tapping on this fixed it, and from what I've read, tapping on it basically broke up a fused portion in here that's not supposed to be fused, and it made it work. So hopefully this helps you out. And then if it's not the solenoid, hopefully some of those other issues that I mentioned can help you cue in on how to get your truck fixed. Thanks for watching. If you do decide to use a non-Motorcraft solenoid and you get the cheaper version of it, maybe consider bringing at least a socket and a ratchet. That way you can get your battery off if it happens to you and you're away from home. Or you could even tap on it potentially and see if that helps. That way you're not driving around with your starter engaged down there, because it'll eventually burn out. And if you can avoid that, that'd be good.